It was the kind of moment that could only happen in a movie, yet it was unfolding in real life. Keanu Reeves, the Hollywood icon, stood at the podium, his eyes scanning the audience with a rare intensity. He had been invited to give a speech at a charity event in his hometown. But this wasn't just any event. It was a celebration of people who had made a lasting impact on the community. Keanu was there to honor them, but little did he know, someone in the crowd had impacted his life in ways he could never forget. As Keanu spoke, his voice steady and warm, he suddenly paused. His gaze locked on a figure in the crowd, a woman standing near the back. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Keanu's heart skipped a beat. He recognized her. It was Mrs. Thompson, his high school English teacher, the woman who had inspired him more than anyone else had, in a sense, planted the seed for everything he had become. Back then, Keanu had been just another quiet, withdrawn teenager, struggling to find his place in the world. But Mrs. Thompson saw something in him that others didn't. She saw his potential. She wasn't just his teacher. She was the one who had encouraged him to pursue his passion for acting, even when he had doubted himself. Keanu had kept in touch with her over the years, but he hadn't seen her in nearly a decade. Yet there she was, standing in the crowd, a proud smile on her face. The realization hit him like a wave. She was here, in the room, watching him speak, and he owed so much of his success to her belief in him. His mind raced as emotions flooded. His chest. His voice faltered just for a second before he regained his composure. The audience didn't know what was happening, but Keanu did. He knew that this moment wasn't just about him. It was about honoring the woman who had shaped his life in ways that went far beyond a classroom. He took a deep breath, and without missing a beat, he smiled and called out to her. "Mrs. Thompson," he said, his voice clear and full of gratitude. "I see you back there. Thank you for everything." The room fell silent. Everyone turned to look at the woman who had helped mold the man standing before them. Keanu's words weren't just a recognition of her presence. They were a thank you for the countless hours she had spent nurturing his growth, for the quiet encouragement, the late-night talks about dreams and possibilities. The crowd began to applaud, and Keanu's heart swelled with emotion. It wasn't just about him being on stage or receiving accolades. It was about giving credit where it was due, to the woman who had seen him for who he could be, not just who he was. Mrs. Thompson's eyes filled with tears as she stood up, overwhelmed by the public recognition. Keanu's simple but powerful words were more than she had ever imagined, and in that moment something incredible happened. The entire room stood up, applauding not just Keanu, but also the teacher who had changed the course of his life. The applause was deafening, but it wasn't for the Hollywood star they had come to see. It was for the humble, unassuming woman who had shaped his future. Keanu Reeves had just recognized his teacher in front of a crowd of thousands, and it was a moment that would leave everyone speechless. The applause lingered for a few moments longer, before the room settled into a hushed silence, the weight of the moment still hanging in the air. Keanu could feel the deep sense of gratitude flowing through him, as if every part of him was telling the story of how one woman had seen potential in a young boy when no one else did. Mrs. Thompson had always believed in him even when he couldn't see it himself. Her belief had given him the strength to chase his dreams, to push through the obstacles and to never give up. He owed everything to her. But as Keanu looked out at the audience, he realized that the recognition wasn't just a personal moment. Between him and Mrs. Thompson, it was a reminder to everyone in the room of the power of belief. The power of seeing people for who they could be, not just who they were in that moment. The world had a habit of writing people off, of seeing them as ordinary or unimportant. But Mrs. Thompson had never seen Keanu that way. She had seen the spark in him, and she had nurtured it with care and patience even when it seemed like that spark might not light up the world. Keanu knew that she wasn't the only teacher who had made a difference in someone's life. There were countless other teachers, mentors, and unsung heroes out there who had done the same, seen something in a person that no one else had. And so, without thinking twice, Keanu decided to do something he hadn't planned. He stepped away from the podium and walked toward Mrs. Thompson, his gaze never leaving her. The room watched in stunned silence as Keanu approached the woman who had shaped his life in ways words could hardly capture. When he reached her, he gently took her hand, his voice soft but strong. "Mrs. Thompson, what you did for me all those years ago I can never repay," Keanu said, his eyes reflecting both admiration and humility. "But today I want to make sure you know that the impact you've had on my life has shaped every choice I've made. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, and because of you I am here today." Mrs. Thompson, her hands trembling, tried to hold back the tears, but it was impossible. She had spent so many years pouring into students, giving them pieces of herself. And in that moment she was receiving the greatest gift of all, acknowledgement and gratitude from the very person who had once walked into her classroom unsure of his future. Keanu turned back to the audience, his eyes scanning the sea of faces that had been witnessing this powerful exchange. "This isn't just my story," he continued, his voice now filled with purpose. "This is a story of all the teachers, mentors, and figures who quietly shape the future of those around them. You may never know the full impact you have, but trust me, it's there." The room erupted into applause once again. But this time, it wasn't just for Keanu. It was for all the unsung heroes who made a difference in the lives of others without seeking recognition. Keanu's words had done more than just honor Mrs. Thompson. They had started a conversation about the importance of mentorship, kindness, and believing in others when it seemed like no one else would. But as the applause continued, Keanu felt a sense of unease in his chest. It wasn't just about the recognition anymore. There was something more, something deeper, that he couldn't yet put into words. What if Mrs. Thompson hadn't been there? What if she hadn't seen the potential in him? His life, his career might have taken a completely different path, one that didn't involve the Hollywood films, the awards, or the global recognition. What if he had given up on acting, believing the world's expectations of him instead of following his own instincts? Keanu shook the thought away, refusing to entertain it. He knew that his journey had been shaped by many forces, and his encounter with Mrs. Thompson was just one of those pivotal moments. But it was a moment that had changed him forever. As the night wore on, Keanu couldn't help but think about how many people just like him had been shaped by mentors and teachers who might never get the recognition they truly deserved. He thought about how much more the world could accomplish if people took the time to truly see one another, to believe in each other's potential, no matter how small or unremarkable it might seem at first. It was in that moment, as he sat down to continue the event, that Keanu decided to make a pledge. He would continue to use his platform, his fame, and his influence not just for his own gain, but to elevate others, the ones who had been overlooked, the ones who had been told they couldn't do it. He would dedicate his life to giving back, to being the kind of person who encouraged others the way Mrs. Thompson had encouraged him. Keanu Reeves had found his calling, not just as a movie star, but as a mentor, a guide, and a force for good. And it all started with one moment, one recognition of a teacher who had seen something in him long before anyone else did. The next day, Keanu woke up with a new sense of purpose. As he looked out of his window, the sunlight filtering through the curtains, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted inside him. The night before, when he had recognized Mrs. Thompson in the crowd, it had stirred a deep connection within him, not just with her, but with every person who had ever taken the time to see potential in someone else. He thought about the countless interactions he had had throughout his life, both on and off screen, and realized how much those small moments of belief had shaped his journey. It wasn't just about the roles he played in films or the red carpet events. It was about the impact he had on the people around him and the impact they had on him. The power of recognition, seeing someone for who they could be, and not just who they were in that moment, had been the thread running through the pivotal moments of his life. And he knew that this recognition, this ability to see others, was something he had to carry forward. As Keanu got ready for the day, he began to think about how he could do more. The world was full of people with untapped potential, people whose stories had never been told, people who were waiting for someone to believe in them. He had been fortunate. He had had Mrs. Thompson, and countless others who had seen his worth when he couldn't see it for himself. But what about everyone else? How many brilliant, kind, capable people were out there just waiting for someone to notice them? He knew he had to act. Keanu picked up his phone and began to make a few calls. First, he reached out to some of the young actors he had worked with over the years, offering guidance and support in any way he could. He knew that many of them were facing obstacles, struggling with doubt or a lack of direction. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew that sometimes just offering a listening ear or a word of encouragement could make all the difference. Then, he made another call to the charity organization that had invited him to speak the previous evening. They were dedicated to supporting underprivileged youth, providing mentorship, scholarships, and opportunities to those who might not otherwise have them. Keanu had always admired their work, and now he was determined to do more than just make a donation. He wanted to be involved, to roll up his sleeves and help mentor young people who were just beginning their journeys. It was clear to him now that his purpose wasn't just to be an actor, it was to be a guide, a mentor, a source of encouragement for those who needed it most. The more he thought about it, the more he realized how important it was to give back, to use his platform, his experience, and his resources to make a real difference. And so Keanu made a promise to himself. He would never again take for granted the power of recognition. He would seek out the people who needed it most, the ones who had been overlooked, the ones who were silently struggling to find their way. He would be their Mrs. Thompson. It was this idea that drove him throughout the next few months. Keanu began dedicating more of his time to mentorship programs, working closely with at-risk youth and young adults who were looking for direction in their lives. He spent countless hours in community centers, talking to kids about their dreams, their fears, and their goals. He shared his own story with them, not to boast, but to show them that it was possible to break through the noise and find success, no matter how difficult the journey might seem. The more time he spent with these young people, the more he realized how much they needed someone to believe in them. And he was more than willing to be that person. But just as he had helped others, Keanu found that he, too, was being changed by the experience. The young people he mentored, the ones whose lives had been marked by hardship and struggle, taught him lessons he had never expected. They taught him about resilience, about hope in the face of adversity, and about the power of a single person to make a difference. Keanu was reminded of the importance of community, of the collective power that comes when people join together to support one another. He had often been the recipient of kindness and encouragement throughout his career, but now he was experiencing it from a different perspective. It was humbling, and it made him even more determined to give back. But as Keanu's commitment to mentorship grew, so did the challenges. He was constantly pulled in different directions, balancing his acting career with his newfound role as a mentor. There were days when he felt overwhelmed, unsure if he was doing enough. But then, in a quiet moment, he remembered the feeling he had when he saw Mrs. Thompson in the crowd the night before. That sense of connection, of gratitude, of recognizing someone for who they truly were, that was the reason he had to keep going. He was never going to stop, not until he had made a difference in the lives of as many people as possible. As Keanu continued his work, his influence began to spread beyond his immediate circle. The more he poured into others, the more the ripple effect was felt, reaching places he had never imagined. The young people he mentored began to believe in themselves, just as he had once done, and they in turn began helping others. It was a cycle of positivity and empowerment that Keanu had only dreamed of before. One of the kids he worked with, Alex, a teenager from a rough neighborhood, stood out. Alex had always been a shy, quiet kid who kept to himself. He had big dreams, but he didn't know how to take the first step toward making them a reality. When Keanu first met him, Alex was skeptical, his walls built high, afraid of opening up to anyone, let alone someone as famous as Keanu. But Keanu saw through the facade just as Mrs. Thompson had seen through his own years ago. One afternoon, as they sat together in the community center, Keanu leaned in and said, "I know it's tough, Alex. I've been where you are. But the first step is believing that you deserve more. and then doing something about it. You have to trust yourself. At first, Alex resisted. He didn't believe he could do it, didn't think he was worthy of the opportunities Keanu was offering. But Keanu didn't back down. He kept showing up, kept encouraging Alex to take small steps, and slowly the teenager began to open up. He started applying for acting classes, something he had always dreamed of but never thought was within his reach. Keanu helped him prepare for auditions, providing advice and encouraging him to embrace every part of his journey. The breakthrough came when Alex landed a small role in a local theater production. It wasn't a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but for Alex, it was everything. It was the moment he realized that the world wasn't as closed off as he had once thought. And it was all because someone believed in him. Someone saw his potential. Alex's success story didn't stop there. As he began to shine in the theater world, he started to inspire others around him. His story became a beacon of hope for kids in his community, and soon Alex was giving back in his own way, helping the younger generation find their voice, just as Keanu had helped him find his. Keanu couldn't help but feel immense pride when he saw Alex's transformation. It was moments like these that made all the sleepless nights, the tough decisions, and the personal sacrifices worth it. Alex was living proof that the power of recognition, of seeing someone's potential before they could see it themselves, could change everything. And yet, even as Alex's story unfolded, Keanu felt that his own journey was far from complete. There was still so much to be done. He still had so many people to reach, so many voices to elevate. Keanu began to expand his efforts, reaching out to schools, charities, and organizations that were doing work in underprivileged communities. He wanted to create a network of support, a collective movement that would ensure no one was left behind. No dream was too small to chase. But even as his mission grew, Keanu never lost sight of what had started it all: Mrs. Thompson. Every time he spoke to young people, every time he mentored someone, he thought of her, the teacher who had given him a chance when no one else had. It was her belief in him that had sparked the fire inside, and it was that same fire he was now passing on to others. But Keanu knew that change didn't happen overnight. The road was long and full of challenges. There were moments when he doubted himself, moments when the weight of his responsibility felt too much to bear. But in those times he would remember the stories of people like Alex, and he would press on. Keanu understood now that his legacy wasn't going to be defined by the films he made or the awards he won. It would be defined by the lives he touched, by the people he helped to believe in themselves, just as he had once believed in himself because of Mrs. Thompson. True success, he realized, wasn't about fame. It was about helping others find their purpose and seeing them achieve their dreams. The impact of his work was beginning to multiply, and Keanu felt a deep sense of fulfillment that he had never known before. It was a fulfillment that wasn't measured by how many people knew his name, but by how many people were inspired to make a difference in their own lives and in the lives of others. As Keanu's mission expanded, so did his understanding of what it meant to be truly impactful. He began working not just with individuals, but with entire communities, helping them realize their collective potential. One of the most challenging projects he took on was in a neighborhood where the idea of success seemed almost unreachable. The community was plagued by poverty, crime, and a sense of hopelessness. The children there grew up surrounded by the harsh realities of life, and their dreams were often stifled by the weight of their circumstances. Keanu knew that change wouldn't come easily, but he also knew that change was possible. He began by visiting the schools in the area, speaking with teachers and administrators, and offering resources. It wasn't just about giving money or building new programs. It was about offering hope, showing the students that they had the power to overcome the odds stacked against them. Keanu shared his own story with them, explaining how he had come from a place of uncertainty, how he had faced rejection, failure, and self-doubt, but still managed to find success. It wasn't about luck, he told them. It was about perseverance and believing in your own worth. You have the ability to change your story, he told them. No matter where you come from, you have the power to decide what your future will be. Keanu's words resonated deeply with the children, But it wasn't enough to just tell them. They needed to see it in action. So Keanu partnered with local organizations to create workshops, mentorship programs, and after-school activities that would give the kids the tools they needed to start building their futures. One of the most rewarding parts of this initiative was seeing the shift in the children's attitudes. They went from being skeptical, unsure of their abilities, to being filled with a new sense of purpose. They started participating more actively. In class, they began pursuing their interests with passion, and most importantly, they began to believe that they were worthy of a better life. It wasn't an easy journey, and there were many setbacks along the way. Some of the kids still faced personal challenges that made it hard to stay focused. Others were tempted to return to the life they knew, where their dreams were less important than survival. But Keanu refused to give up on them. He showed up every day, whether it was to have lunch with them, help with their homework, or just offer a listening ear. Slowly but surely, the kids began to see progress. They started achieving small victories, passing exams they once thought impossible, winning competitions, and gaining the confidence to stand up for themselves. Keanu's role in their lives was never to be a savior, but rather a guide, a beacon of possibility. And as the months passed, he saw that the changes weren't just happening in the students' lives. The entire community began to shift. The local businesses took notice and started to invest in the future of the kids. New opportunities for employment and education began to open up, and the sense of hopelessness that once plagued the area started to dissipate. Keanu was amazed at how a small seed of belief could grow into something so powerful. The students he mentored were now passing on the lessons they had learned to others, creating a ripple effect that spread far beyond the walls of their school. The community was transforming, and the people there were starting to believe in themselves in ways they never had before. Keanu saw one young girl, Jasmine, who had been particularly shy and withdrawn, standing in front of a crowd at a community event, sharing her own story of growth. "If it wasn't for people like Mr. Reeves," she said, "I wouldn't be standing here today. I didn't think I could do it, but I did. And now I know I can do anything." Her words were powerful, and Keanu knew that this was just one example of the many success stories that were being written in that community. Jasmine's transformation was a testament to the strength that existed within all of them. It was just a matter of finding the right people to believe in them. Keanu began to realize that the true impact of his work wasn't in the public recognition, the awards, or even the media coverage. It was in the quiet, unseen moments when lives were being quietly transformed. It was in the moments when he saw a young person's eyes light up with hope, when a community realized its own strength, when someone took their first step toward a better future. The success stories he witnessed in those communities were the real rewards for his efforts. But even as the momentum built, Keanu couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was still more to be done. He had touched so many lives, but there were still countless others out there who needed help, who needed someone to believe in them. He had seen how powerful one person's belief could be, but he also knew that there would always be more work to do. That realization sparked a new idea in Keanu's mind. What if he could start a foundation, a place where people could not only be mentored, but also receive the education and resources they needed to pursue their dreams, no matter their background or circumstances? It wasn't just a dream anymore. It was a plan. Keanu set to work building the foundation, reaching out to partners, sponsors, and volunteers who shared his vision. He knew that it would take time, effort, and resources, but he was ready. This was his purpose now, to be a catalyst for change, to continue what he had started, and to make sure that no one ever had to feel like they didn't have the support they needed to succeed. And as he began to put the foundation into motion, he knew that this was just the beginning. There were still so many more lives to touch, so many more stories to be told, and so many more people who needed someone to believe in them. Keanu wasn't done yet. He had only just begun. As Keanu's foundation took shape, it became clear that the impact of his work was growing faster than he had anticipated. What started as a small initiative to mentor a handful of young people had evolved into something far more significant. The foundation began receiving attention from all over the world. from celebrities, business leaders, and organizations who shared Keanu's passion for empowering those in need. But even as the foundation grew, Keanu remained deeply involved with the individuals he had first started helping. It was in those personal connections, the one-on-one moments, that he truly felt the weight of his purpose. One of the young men Keanu had been mentoring, Marcus, had faced a particularly difficult road. Marcus had grown up in foster care, moving from home to home, never feeling like he truly belonged anywhere. He had a love for music, but no resources to pursue it. He had tried to get into music school, but his applications were rejected time and time again. Each rejection felt like a personal blow, reinforcing the belief that he would never make it. But Keanu didn't see Marcus as a person who would give up easily. He saw him as someone with immense potential, someone who simply needed an opportunity. Keanu introduced Marcus to a network of music producers and artists who were willing to give him a shot. It wasn't an instant path to stardom, but it was a chance to prove himself, to show that he had what it took. Keanu knew that sometimes that was all it took, a chance to be seen. Over the next several months, Marcus worked tirelessly, recording demo tracks, performing at local venues, and networking with industry professionals. Slowly, his hard work started to pay off. He landed a contract with a small record label, and before long, his music was being played on local radio stations. Marcus couldn't believe it. His dream was finally coming true. But more than that, he knew he owed it to the people who had believed in him, who had pushed him to keep going when he felt like quitting. He owed it to Keanu, who had seen something in him long before Marcus could see it himself. "I wouldn't be here without you, man," Marcus said to Keanu one evening after his first major performance. "You didn't just give me advice, you gave me a chance. You made me believe that I could do this." Keanu smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "You did the work, Marcus. I just reminded you what you were capable of." As Marcus's career continued to rise, so did the impact of Keanu's foundation. More and more young people began to come forward, eager to take the steps that would lead them to a better life. Keanu's dedication to seeing the potential in others had sparked a chain reaction that was changing lives, and it was only just beginning. But as the foundation's reach expanded, so did the challenges. The larger Keanu's movement grew, the more people he had to manage, the more resources he needed, and the more pressure he faced to keep everything running smoothly. At times, it felt overwhelming. There were days when Keanu questioned whether he could handle it all, whether he was doing enough, whether his efforts were really making a difference. But then in the quiet moments, he would think back to the students, the families, and the young people whose lives had already been changed. He would remember Marcus and Jasmine and all the others whose stories had been rewritten because someone believed in them, and he knew that he couldn't stop now. Keanu began to think bigger. He wanted to create a movement, one that would inspire people to believe in others and to help them unlock their full potential. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about a collective effort, a community that would come together to lift each other up. Keanu started reaching out to others in the entertainment industry, asking them to join him in his mission. It wasn't about using their fame or their resources for personal gain. It was about using their influence to create lasting change. Slowly, other celebrities began to step up, offering their time, their expertise, and their platforms to help elevate young people in need. The movement gained momentum, and soon it was no longer just about Keanu's foundation. It was about a global network of people, from all walks of life, working together to ensure that no one was ever left behind. Keanu had always believed in the power of individual action, but now he was seeing the power of collective action in a way he never had before. Together, they were making a difference. As the years passed, the foundation continued to thrive. Hundreds of young people were given the opportunities they needed to succeed, whether it was in the arts, technology, sports, or education. Keanu was now working alongside business leaders, philanthropists, and educators, all of whom shared his vision of a world where every person had the chance to fulfill their potential. But even as the foundation flourished, Keanu knew that his true legacy wasn't going to be measured by the number of scholarships given or the number of success stories. It was going to be measured by something more profound, the lasting impact he had on the lives of those who had once felt invisible. Keanu realized that true greatness wasn't about how many people knew your name. It was about how many lives you touched, how many hearts you changed, and how many people you helped to believe in themselves. And with that realization, he knew that his journey wasn't over. There was still so much more to do, so many more lives to change, and so many more stories to be written. Keanu's purpose had always been about recognition, recognizing the potential in others and helping them recognize it in themselves. And as long as he had the chance, he would continue doing just that. Because in the end, the greatest legacy we can leave is not the fame we accumulate, but the people we lift up along the way. The more Keanu saw the positive ripple effects of his work, the more he realized how interconnected everything was. The young people he had mentored were not just changing their own lives, they were transforming entire communities. It was no longer just about personal success, it was about creating a culture of empowerment, a culture where people believed in each other and lifted each other up. One of the most impactful stories to come out of this movement was that of a young woman named Sarah. Sarah had grown up in a household filled with constant fighting, financial strain, and emotional turmoil. Her parents had struggled with addiction, and Sarah often found herself looking after her younger siblings, trying to keep the family afloat. Despite her difficult circumstances, Sarah was incredibly bright. She had always loved reading and writing, and her teachers often told her that she had a natural gift for storytelling. But Sarah didn't believe them. She didn't think a girl like her, someone from a broken home with no support system, could ever become a writer. She thought her dreams were out of reach. That was until Keanu stepped into her life. He met Sarah during one of his community outreach events where he was speaking to a group of students about the power of storytelling. Sarah was shy, hesitant to speak up, but something about Keanu's words resonated deeply with her. After his talk, she approached him quietly, unsure of how to ask, but determined to get some guidance. "Mr. Reeves," she said, her voice trembling, "I want to be a writer, but I don't know how. My life is a mess, and I don't think I'll ever get the chance to do something like that." Keanu smiled and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I know how you feel," he said. "But your story isn't finished yet. You don't need to have everything figured out right now. You just need to start, and I believe in you." Sarah felt a spark of hope ignite within her. For the first time, someone believed in her dreams. Keanu didn't promise her an easy path, but he did promise to be there as she took the first steps. He introduced her to a network of writers, editors, and professionals who could help her hone her craft. He even invited her to write a piece for one of his foundation's projects, a collection of stories from young people who had overcome adversity. The experience was life-changing for Sarah. As she wrote her story, she realized just how far she had come, how much strength she had within her even when she hadn't known it. The process of writing became therapeutic for her, a way to process the pain of her past and to finally claim her identity as a writer. But the journey wasn't without its challenges. Sarah faced many obstacles, including financial difficulties, the pressures of her family, and the ongoing struggle to balance her dreams with her responsibilities. There were moments when she felt like giving up, when the weight of her past seemed too heavy to bear. But Keanu was always there, offering encouragement and guidance. He reminded her that setbacks were a part of the journey, not the end of it. Over time, Sarah's writing grew stronger, and she started to believe in herself in ways she never thought possible. Her work was published in local newspapers, and eventually, she was offered a full scholarship to a prestigious writing program. Keanu's influence in her life had sparked a transformation, but it was Sarah's own determination and resilience that had carried her through, and as Sarah began to share her story with the world, she realized that it wasn't just about her personal success. It was about the opportunity to inspire others. She became a mentor in her own right, helping other young people who were facing the same struggles she had once endured. She used her writing to shed light on the realities of life in poverty and to encourage others to keep pushing forward, no matter the circumstances. It was a full-circle moment for Keanu when he saw Sarah standing in front of a group of young writers, speaking to them with the same passion and conviction that he had once shared with her. She had become the very thing she had needed all along, a source of hope and inspiration for others. Keanu couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. He had known from the start that Sarah had a fire within her, a spark waiting to be ignited. And now, watching her light the way for others, he knew that this was the true impact of his work. It wasn't about changing the world in one grand gesture. It was about the small, everyday moments when people believed in each other and gave each other the chance to succeed. The story of Sarah was just one of many, but it was a powerful reminder of the importance of recognition, encouragement, and belief. Keanu understood that success wasn't always about achieving fame or wealth. It was about empowering others to pursue their dreams, to believe in themselves, and to rise above the circumstances they had been born into. And as his foundation continued to grow, Keanu's mission remained the same: to help as many people as possible realize their own potential and to give them the tools they needed to create a better future for themselves. The journey was far from over, but Keanu knew one thing for certain: he would never stop believing in the power of people, because in the end, the greatest change came not from the world's biggest stars, but from the quiet, everyday heroes who were willing to help others believe in themselves. As Keanu's foundation continued to expand, it reached a tipping point. What had once been a small initiative had grown into a global movement, with thousands of young people benefiting from its programs. Keanu had always known that the key to lasting change wasn't just about giving people opportunities. It was about building a community where everyone supported each other, where everyone believed in the power of collective success. But with that growth came new challenges. As more people came forward seeking help, the foundation's resources were stretched thin. Keanu was forced to balance the foundation's expansion with his own personal life, and there were moments when the weight of it all felt overwhelming. He found himself torn between attending meetings, making important decisions, and spending time with the people he loved. Yet no matter how demanding the work became, Keanu never lost sight of why he had started this journey in the first place: to make a meaningful impact in the lives of those who needed it the most. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Keanu found himself alone in his office, reviewing new applications for scholarships and mentorships. He was starting to feel the pressure of trying to change the world. He had reached so many people, but he couldn't help but wonder if he was doing enough. That's when he received an unexpected call. It was from a former mentor of his own, a woman who had been instrumental in his early career, someone who had seen his potential when no one else did. Her name was Eva, and she had always been a guiding light for Keanu, offering wisdom and perspective during some of his most challenging moments. "Keanu," Eva said with her familiar calm voice, "I know you've been under a lot of pressure lately, and I just wanted to remind you of something important." Keanu sat back in his chair, weary but grateful to hear from her. "What's that, Eva?" he asked, his voice tired but attentive. "You've already done more than most people could ever dream of," she replied. "You've created a movement that is touching lives all over the world. But more than that, you've shown people what it means to believe in each other. That's your legacy. You've inspired countless people, not with your fame but with your authenticity and your willingness to give." Keanu paused, taking in her words. Sometimes it took someone else's perspective to remind him of what he was truly accomplishing. "But there's so much more to do," he said quietly. "I feel like I'm not doing enough, that I'm letting people down." Eva's voice softened. "Keanu, don't measure your worth by the scale of the work. Measure it by the lives you've already touched. You don't have to save everyone, but you've helped countless people find their way. And that's what matters." Keanu felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. Eva had always had a way of putting things into perspective, reminding him that the value of his work wasn't defined by the obstacles he faced or the number of people he could reach. It was defined by the lives that were changed, the dreams that had been rekindled, and the sense of hope he had inspired in others. As Keanu hung up the phone, he sat there in silence, reflecting on the many stories he had heard over the years. He thought about Marcus, who had gone on to achieve his dreams in music. He thought about Sarah, who had become a writer and a mentor in her own right. And he thought about all the young people whose lives were still unfolding, whose potential had been unlocked because someone had taken the time to believe in them. Keanu knew that he couldn't do it all on his own, but he didn't need to, because the power of his work was never in the individuals he helped. It was in the community he had built. It was in the people who were now paying it forward, sharing their knowledge, their resources, and their encouragement with the next generation. As the foundation continued to grow, Keanu knew that it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about the collective strength of the many people who had come together to create something bigger than themselves. Keanu's journey had always been about more than just personal success. It had been about creating a legacy of empowerment. And as long as he could continue to inspire others to believe in themselves, he knew that his mission would never be complete. Keanu's story wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about changing the world, one person at a time. And as he sat back in his chair, looking out at the growing network of people who were now a part of his movement, Keanu knew that they were just getting started. The work he had begun would ripple outward, affecting generations to come. And he felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that he had done exactly what he had set out to do. He had given others the chance to rise, and in doing so, he had created a better world for all. Months passed, and the global movement Keanu had helped build showed no signs of slowing down. Every day brought new success stories. Individuals who had found their voice, their path, or their purpose through the opportunities the foundation had created. But while the world saw the outward success, Keanu had started to reflect deeply on his own journey. He had always known that success wasn't about awards, accolades, or fame. It was about helping others realize their potential. But even so, Keanu couldn't help but wonder if there was more he could do. With his increasing visibility, he'd been approached by larger organizations and world leaders who admired his work. They offered financial support, media exposure, and powerful platforms to expand the reach of his foundation even further. Yet, despite all the offers and potential growth, Keanu remained steadfast in his core belief. His work wasn't about the spotlight. It was about authentic connection. He had no interest in becoming a figurehead for an organization or a brand. What mattered to him was the real, tangible impact he could make on the people whose lives were touched by his efforts. The truth was, Keanu had never craved attention for himself. He was happiest when he was working directly with others, when he could see the change he was making on a personal level. And that's exactly what he continued to do. As he visited schools, communities, and even remote villages, Keanu saw firsthand how much the foundation had transformed lives. He met a young man named Elijah during one of these visits. Elijah was in his early 20s, and his life had been filled with struggle. Raised in an inner-city neighborhood, he had lost both his parents at a young age and had been forced to navigate the harsh realities of life on his own. But Elijah had always had a passion for technology. He loved computers, coding, and building things from scratch. However, like so many others, Elijah's dream seemed out of reach. He didn't have the resources or the support to pursue a career in tech. That was until he connected with Keanu's foundation. Elijah's story was a familiar one. His potential had been ignored for so long, simply because of his circumstances. But Keanu saw something different in him. He saw the spark of creativity, the drive to succeed against all odds. And with the foundation's help, Elijah was given the opportunity to pursue his passion for technology. Over the next few months, Keanu and Elijah worked closely together. Keanu introduced him to top tech professionals and provided him with resources to attend coding boot camps and workshops. Elijah devoured every piece of information, learning faster than anyone had expected. Slowly but surely, Elijah's skills began to improve, and he started to gain confidence. As Keanu watched Elijah's transformation, he couldn't help but think back to his own journey. He had been in a similar place, full of potential but uncertain of how to get from where he was to where he wanted to be. But what had made all the difference for Keanu was that someone had believed in him. Someone had recognized his worth when he couldn't see it himself. And now, through Elijah's success, Keanu saw the full circle of his work. He wasn't just giving people a chance, he was showing them how to give that same chance to others. The cycle of support and empowerment was unfolding before his eyes. Elijah's breakthrough came when he was invited to work on a major tech project with a prominent startup company. The opportunity was life-changing. And yet, as Elijah's career began to take off, he never forgot where he came from. He started volunteering with the foundation, mentoring young people in the same situation he had been in, offering them the same guidance and belief that had helped him. Elijah's story, just like Sarah's and Marcus's, became part of the foundation's ever-growing tapestry of success stories. And with each new person who found their way, Keanu felt the profound impact of his work ripple outward. But with all the success came something else. The recognition that Keanu's influence had expanded far beyond what he could have ever imagined. He was no longer just a mentor. He was a symbol of hope, of perseverance, and of what could happen when people were given the chance to succeed. It wasn't about celebrity or status, it was about humanity, about showing people the best of what they could become. And as Keanu reflected on his journey, he couldn't help but think of the countless people whose lives had changed because of one simple truth. Everyone has potential, and everyone deserves the chance to realize it. Keanu's story wasn't just about a man who had once been a famous actor. It was about a man who had used his platform to give back, to elevate others, and to create a movement of genuine, lasting change. As the foundation grew, so did the stories of transformation. And Keanu knew that this was only the beginning. There were still countless people out there whose lives could be changed by someone believing in them, by someone showing them that they too had something valuable to offer. Keanu realized that true success wasn't measured by how much you had. It was measured by how many people you had helped along the way. And as long as he could continue to give back, he knew he was living the life he had always wanted. A life that wasn't about personal accolades, but about the legacy he was creating through others. As Keanu stood at the center of his movement, looking out at the faces of those whose lives had been transformed by the foundation, he realized that what he had built was something much bigger than himself. It was more than just a collection of success stories or programs. It was a family, a network of people who were all working together to lift each other up. What began as a small idea, a simple desire to make a difference, had evolved into a powerful global force for good. Keanu had created something that went beyond the headlines and the praise. It wasn't about recognition, it was about purpose. And as he watched Elijah, Sarah, Marcus, and countless others step into roles of leadership and mentorship, Keanu knew his job wasn't finished. His work was now carrying on through them. Keanu had always believed in the power of paying it forward, of creating a ripple effect that would spread far beyond the initial act of kindness or support. And that's exactly what was happening. One by one, the people he had helped were helping others, and that chain of support was growing stronger every day. But for all the success and progress, Keanu never lost sight of his original mission: to show the world that everyone has worth, and that no matter where you come from or what challenges you face, you have the power to change your own life and the lives of others. It was in those quiet moments away from the cameras and the spotlight when Keanu felt the full impact of his work. When he saw the faces of young people filled with hope, when he witnessed their transformation from uncertainty to confidence, he knew he had accomplished what he had set out to do. Keanu didn't need to be remembered as an actor, a celebrity, or even a philanthropist. He wanted to be remembered as someone who had believed in people, someone who had given them the tools, the encouragement, and the opportunity to believe in themselves. And as he stood there among the many people he had inspired, Keanu knew that his greatest achievement wasn't the projects, the media coverage, or the accolades. It was the impact he had on people's lives. His legacy wasn't in the awards or the headlines. It was in the lives he had touched, in the people who had found hope, purpose, and success because he had taken the time to believe in them. As the years passed and the foundation grew, Keanu's story became intertwined with the stories of countless others. Stories of struggle, triumph, and the unshakable belief that anyone could overcome their circumstances. Keanu had sparked a movement. But it was the people in that movement who had made it something truly extraordinary. And as he stepped away from the spotlight, content with the path he had chosen, he smiled, knowing that the work would continue long after he was gone. Because the true measure of a person's legacy wasn't in the accolades they collected, but in the lives they helped to shape. Keanu Reeves had changed the world, not through fame, but through his belief in others. And in doing so, he had left a mark on history that would be felt for generations to come. Please subscribe channel for Keanu Reeves. Respect. Thanks.